Hi, my name is Lee Brock, and I'm one of the co-artistic directors of the Barrow Group. And for those of you who don't know who the Barrow Group is, we are a nonprofit theater company and training facility. And we are located in New York City. We have our new space on 520 8th Avenue, which we just moved into April 1st. So definitely come see us. We produce plays, we develop work, and we also train actors and playwrights and directors. But this afternoon, it is my divine pleasure to be talking to Edwin Joseph for our artist conversation. And Edwin is he's an actor and a writer and an opera singer, and he's also one of the founding members of the Midnight Oil Collective, which is an investment group for equitable art creation, something like that, creating a system to help support actors and fund artists. So we're so thrilled that you are with us here this afternoon, and I hear that you've just gotten back from India. So how was that?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Lee. I'm so happy to be here. It's such a wonderful pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, and it was great. I was there for about 3 weeks, and I hadn't been in 2 years. Went right before the pandemic, thank God. But yeah, I was just saying that it was kind of exhausting emotionally on some level because I kind of saw my friends age, not literally as much because it was just 2 years, just kind of just this general drudgery of the pandemic.
Mm,
And yeah, it was kind of a very profound sort of experience for me.
And where in India were you?
Oh,
Mumbai?
I went to a lot of places. I grew up in Delhi and then I lived in Bombay for 3 years before I came here, but my family's from Kerala.
Mhm.
So I did go to all three of those cities, but I also went to Goa for a couple of days for like a friend's reception. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. So, Edwin, what's keeping you inspired these days?
What's keeping me inspired?
Yes.
I think my friends and colleagues and cool things that they are doing. I find myself very inspired by simple things now, in the sense that what I feel I find myself most inspired by is like a singular sort of like task that has been done very, very well. uh,
Mhm.
uh, which is kind of thing. I think it's in like rejection of me feeling like my life is too complicated. I don't want to worry about these many things. Like yesterday I did a screenplay reading. It was like a public reading, and we like rehearsed for a couple hours and then did the reading. It was like a script from 1942. It was King's Row.
Mhm.
And what I really enjoyed was that I knew that for 6 hours all I'm doing is just that. uh and I have been really enjoying moments that allow me to do that. And also in the shows that I've been watching, what I really enjoy is like a very small thing that's been done really well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, as an example, David Byrne's American Utopia, I'd watched that when it was like still on Broadway. I thought the choreography in that show was just so incredible because it was so simple. It functioned within a very clear sort of framework, and it felt very calming to me. It felt very, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that you mentioned this very same thing when we were in class
Yeah.
down on 29th Street at Simple Studios, that just even observing, just doing like making a cup of tea the best way that you possibly can, or working
Yeah.
on the scene and going deeper into the scene. And, I think my mother had this saying, she goes, happiness is a job well done. Right. So just even like you're doing the best you can in terms of that thing. And I think as artists too, that you're going deeper into that observation of, oh, how can I do this the best that I possibly can? Or it's
Yeah,
great.
I think it's the notion that once you're past the obvious, then it gets interesting.
Uh-huh.
Because like, and the problem is you could be in the obvious for a very long time. And post that, it starts to get weird, and it's like, okay, well, what is that? Which is, at every tiny little detail sort of becomes exciting, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's like
So yeah, so I guess like what I'm inspired by is a concept rather than anything else. But
no, but you could just have a day of like doing, little things like the best you possibly can, or really kind of going deeper into each experience that you have.
yeah, I don't think I do it. I think, and that's the reason I think I'm so inspired by it, because I feel like it's something that I want to, but I don't do it. I want to, but yeah, maybe this is my shot.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you are. So earlier this year, we had that lovely lunch, and you were telling me about, the Midnight Oil Collective.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's slightly complicated, but bear with me, it'll make sense. Uh, so what we started off was with an understanding that, okay, making arts is incredibly risky. It was a pandemic, it was 2020, all of us had contracts that got canceled, and we were all like in a situation where we had contracts to begin with, which is like incredible, and all of that's like amazing. And by us, I mean, we were a collective of like, we were my friends and I, who were all artists. It was like writers, composers, there was a director, a couple of us were actors and performers. And the discussion that we started having was that the arts do make money, clearly. Like, it's an almost $1 trillion industry in America. And when there's certain projects that do well, they do so well. Like, that's clearly the reason why there's like the idea of like a movie star, millionaire, whatever. But the vast majority of those projects are never able to reach that.
Mhm.
And around that time, when we were trying to like solve that problem, we kind of were thinking, oh, is there a way to sort of combine our things in a way that, hey, a lot of these projects that we do might fail, but if like one of them were to do very well, how can all of us sort of like benefit in some capacity? That's where the collective idea comes in. It is a collectivist notion that you could like sort of like share the risk amongst each other, and like sort of, and that also like moves away a little bit from the notion of the individual genius.
Yeah.
Like, anybody who has done the arts for some time like kind of knows that, like, sure, like there is great work, sure, but it's very seldom like one single person who was the absolute genius and did everything themselves to make that happen. Any single like piece that you can imagine as genius often had a lot of people that contributed
Right.
to it in some way.
Right.
So that was the intention with which we're coming. And what that turned into was like an idea for a business that we like then took to like a lot of like business accelerators. And what we were trying to do is like trying to figure out like how are other industries doing it, how are other industries sort of like figuring out best practices and going through and overcoming the problem of this inherent like risk. That's when we like kind of stumbled on venture capital. And that is like a big structure of almost like funding, when you think about it, that has sort of like really fostered innovation in the last like 20 years or so. It has like disproportionately been able to like support and like seed very big ideas that otherwise possibly could have failed, because the vast majority of them do. And what they do is they have a sum of money with which they invest in a lot of different types of like companies and projects, with the idea that most of them fail, but one or two of them becomes like an Uber. And when it does that, it's able to like sort of like offset all of the losses that it had otherwise. And so we like sort of borrow that sort of model. And what we're currently in the process of setting up, and we're like in actively doing, is like setting up a fund that is able to like sort of support and invest in a lot of projects, and like having it be the case that like all of these artists are sort of tied in the potential upside of the fund itself, of the giant like whatever entities like owning all of this. So that still continues to have the profit share situation. Like, so for example, if I was bringing a TV show to MOC and you were bringing a musical, my TV show like failed to like really take off, but your musical became like a big hit, I still have a stand a chance to like get paid, which is sort of transformational. It's not the case that like all of my eggs are in literally this one basket. And we're combining that with another thing that we're borrowing from these other places, something called an incubator and accelerator. That essentially is a system where, like, in our case, like creators and artists sort of like within a cohort develop work. So how that will work early on is like I would come again with my TV show, you would come with your musical. We're in a cohort with like say 10 other artists, and every week we're bringing pages or like asking for feedback, whatever feels most useful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I bring 10 pages. I'm like, this is a problem that I'm trying to solve in my script. Like, can you help me? And you're in a cohort with multidisciplinary artists from like who are working on different types of projects.
Mm-hmm.
So the projects that we're looking at currently is like on stage. So your plays, musicals, operas, whatever. On camera, so TV, film, and animation, and like disruptive ventures, essentially like a new kind of record label, a new kind of like a way to publish books,
Mm-hmm.
things that like literally can be benefited by and directly benefit the other two things, but
Mm-hmm.
like but are so like working within the ecosystem. So
Mm-hmm.
all of these people are able to like borrow from each other's expertise, and everyone is incentivized to collaborate
Mm-hmm.
because like we've set up a direct profit share mechanism
Right.
where like you directly have an incentive to give me your best idea, the
Mm-hmm.
idea that like traditionally artists are like afraid to share
Right.
because like all that I have is my IP.
Right.
So we're like incentivizing people to be able to like share that kind of stuff to like create the best kind of product. And along the way we have like built in like a curriculum that sort of educates artists on an ongoing way to be their own sort of producers or sort of creators, sort of their own business managers, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that like at each point you are able to like structure a contract, you're able to like set up a production tour, whatever it is that you want to do with the most amount of like information. You could still like choose to like bring someone on, but like there is no like there's less of an informational imbalance as it like currently exists.
Mm-hmm.
and and we think like collectively you're able to like leverage sort of best practices and the wisdom of an entire group rather than an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So I said a lot of things right now. So to combine what exactly happens for like a project, say if I'm a writer, I want to create a play, a musical, I come to Monaro Collective, and we've set up a system where like, again, we collectively sort of vet what projects come in. And like once projects are inside MOC, you are also part of the group that's collectively vetting what comes after that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in a developmental process where your first draft is now worked on by a lot of people. You're able to like really hone in on the artistry of it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you are sort of the gaining a lot of like knowledge on how to like set it up. At the end of the first product, at the end of the first like section, you receive an investment of a certain amount of money that you will then be using to create like a proof of concept, essentially for like a TV show. That could, what I'm doing is like a show, I'm doing like a short film
Mm-hmm.
that sort of like establishes what my show will be like, so I can like use that material to be able to sell it, to be able to sort of get other collaborators, get producers, whatever it is I need. For a musical, it's like to do a demo recording, um, which is then followed by a secondary sort of like targeted period where you're really thinking about your product and how you're gonna like push it with into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout all of this, you have all of the things that like MOC as an organization can provide you, as a collective can provide you, which is a cohort, which is a group of people that you're working with. You have resources, literally just in terms of money and like education. You have networks because we're able to like connect with people and like organizations and like everybody from artistic directors to television executives in a way that individuals often aren't able to. And the
Mm-hmm.
last thing, mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
where we have a network of producers and investors and people who can like really help you think through
Mm-hmm.
what is the best case scenario for your project.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so what results is like a system where your project always has a next step.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is. It's a lot of words to say.
No, but it's
It's a
amazing.
lot of things.
Right. It's amazing. But I think just even kind of hearing about that, that it really is just, bringing these artists together to help
Mhm.
to have this supportive, um, nurturing environment to
Yeah,
help them create. But also you've kind of added the financial thing with the
yeah,
venture capitalists, like, coming in and wanting to invest in artistic projects, which is so wonderful and fascinating. So how many artists do you have in your artist collective right now?
we have 14 artists. Yeah, we have 14 artists between all the things that I mentioned. We have a TV show, a play, two musicals, and like a couple businesses, like an animated show for children, all things that we've been like developing currently. But an exciting thing, which is why I was excited to take this call, is like this fall we will be accepting our first open applications,
Mhm.
which I will for sure share with everyone at the Barrow Group. Uh, uh, to I mean, of course, like it's a certain kind of project and a certain kind of individual who enjoys a certain type of collaboration and a certain type of work who's a good fit. But
Right,
our hope is that like everyone at every point of time has more than enough information to
right,
always make the right choice for themselves and their collaborators and their project.
right.
Uh,
So even just kind of saying that, like you are, even if you're saying you're opening it up to people, like, so what if all of a sudden you're kind of slewed with, 3,000 people that want to be a part of this?
Yeah, it still is the case that like with this first group right now, we won't be taking more than like 20, but our hope is to like keep all of these people engaged
Uh-huh.
in some way, because like our hope is that this is an endlessly repeatable sort of process.
Right.
Like the first fund that I mentioned will be like investing in 50 projects. As soon as
Uh-huh.
that's done, there could be 50 new projects.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why that's the advantage of something like this, because if the first one is successful, this is endlessly repeatable. So it is possible that the 3,000, all of them can't be supported at the same time. But we're also very pro sharing our entire like model and everything that we're like doing. Like, of course, we happen to be the guinea pigs that are trying this out. But
Right.
like, what we're really interested in like is the ecosystem itself.
Yeah.
Like, we're
Yeah. Yeah.
hoping that it's like endlessly repeatable. We're hoping a lot of people can like sort of mirror this model. A
Right.
lot of people
Right.
can sort of do that. And plus, we have a lot of like education that we're planning on making very public.
Right.
So even if you aren't directly one of the projects that is like being supported by us, like there will be a lot of education that we think is a big gap in the current way
Yeah.
that arts and education is like taught in America, especially the
Right.
conservatory model.
Right.
And we think we could fill that gap in a lot of ways. So
Right.
yeah, we agree that we can't like support everyone, but there will be a lot of ways in which people can stay engaged in ways that feel empowering to artists.
Right. And I love that because also just even, I think even with the Barrow Group too, we have been, that's one of my missions is like, how are we able to kind of empower
Yeah.
actors to go out and create their own work? Like,
Hmm.
what do you want to say as an artist and how can we
Yeah.
put that out in the world? But then it's easy to sit here and say that. And then
Yeah.
it's a whole different thing to come to New York City when you don't know anybody, find your tribe. And also that, just even that whole thing, coming to New York when you don't really know people, when you're trying to find the people that you want to create with, you're auditioning and you're not hearing back from things. And it can be kind of a lonely,
Yeah,
isolating
it's a nightmare.
experience.
It's absolutely horrible. The problem is inherently, like, I mean, I can talk about acting, but I feel like a lot of art in general, I feel like the business of acting is so antithetical to the craft of acting.
Right, right.
Like
And
what is
it's always
required for
been that
one and the other are two like opposite things.
Yes, yes. It
So
always has
so
been. But here you have this beautiful degree in economics, and then you've got this artist brain. So you've got this, the math brain going on with your economics and the artistic brain. But you're absolutely right. I mean, when we were having that lunch and you said, how can we find a way for artists to kind of make money and live nice, healthy lives
yeah.
with their creativity, rather than always kind of in that struggle or like we were talking about. So you raise your money and you do the play and then it's over. Right.
Yeah,
So it's like,
exactly.
okay,
Exactly.
and you're broke after you've done the play, or you
Yeah.
kind of, now you go you produce another thing, or you produce your movie and you put all your money into the movie and now you're broke again. So
Yeah. So our hope really is like to try and like figure out how can all the things that you dedicate so much of your time and life to, how can those things have a more bigger life, a more substantial life.
right,
And it's a hard thing. I genuinely believe that the first thing really is like finding some kind of community, because I think the community is essential, like not just from having like people to throw ideas off of or whatever. It's just literally somebody who you can sit down and talk to and kind of be like, this sucks, and they're like, yes, it does.
Uh-huh.
Like sometimes that's all you need. That it's kind of like, yeah, that sucks, right? Yeah, that sucks. That's it. Great. And now I can get on with my day and like get stuff done.
Right.
Uh, so
And
I
feel
think
good about
community
getting
is,
that very specific thing, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's a very small little thing that you need, but nothing else kind of kind of can take its place. But yeah, we think we're hoping like, and that's the thing, right? We're we're trying to create something, and I know there's a lot of people out there who are like trying to do cool things, and our hope is that like all of these people can collaborate to create a better model, because like it like clearly, just fundamentally speaking, there's money in it. There's a deep want for it. Like I was reading like a statistic, I think on like Nielsen or something like that, that I think the average American adult spends more than 11 hours every day interacting with some kind of media. And I know it sounds crazy.
11 hours?
11 hours a day. It's because like it could just be like music that's playing in your background while you're working. It could be an audiobook that you're listening to while you're at the gym. It could be the TV show that you watch, obviously. It could be like a blog that you read. All of that stuff is media created often by artists.
Right. Yeah.
And so clearly there's a big demand for it. So so the very fact that like such a vast percentage of people are sort of mistreated and exploited, it just there just needs to be a better thing. And we're always like hope the entire thing of our thing is like one of our core principles is radical transparency. Which
radical
transparency, yeah. Like it was one of the things that like we wrote really early on when we wrote a manifesto, before we had any sort of like understanding of what a business plan was. But we knew that we liked the idea of like being very clear about where we are at every point of time, because we didn't want to like project an idea that we were beyond where we were. And I think it also enables people to be helpful. And we've noticed that's been a pretty big thing. Like a very useful sort of advice has been just getting advice. People, when you really ask with kind of an open heart, I've really experienced that people love to talk.
Yes, they do. And especially kind of if you're really kind of going, asking for money. You can't ask them for money first. You have to ask them for their advice first.
A very early mentor told us that, very importantly. They basically said, you ask for money, you get advice. You ask for advice, you get money.
Right. It's very interesting. But also I think with the human spirit, there's that general thing that people do want to help. People do want to help elevate other people. People want to see people succeed. So and it sounds like you're really clear with this, with your model, and yeah, that you're really clear with it. And it's like so exciting.
Yeah, I think the more important thing is we know what the intended effect is. We know the world that we want to see. We know what the end goal is. And what we have right now is like a model that we think answers a lot of those issues. But the simple truth is like there's no way to tell till like, hopefully we're having this chat again 10 years from now, and it's like, oh yeah, that was a great idea. We fixed everything, or like whatever. Yes, so it is a leap of faith from their perspective. So I think from that, it's just about like taking a step forward in the direction that you want to head, with the understanding that you're going to have to keep on pivoting and like changing, because there's no way you just like stumble on the perfect thing. Even this model like is the way it is after like 2 years. And I'm happy to say that like nothing fundamentally about us has changed in the last like 5 months. So I think this is a good one. And it might change because we're like, oh, that doesn't address this problem, or there's a giant problem with this thing because of which you can't do that. And so the idea is like each time we learn something, we sort of like adapt to it. Which I think is a useful trait for artists.
Definitely.
I think in general, like artists make very good innovators of any kind, because a lot of things that are conducive to making a good artist are things that makes a good innovator.
Yeah. because also I think you're talking about that flexibility and the adaptability and just even that flexible mindset that you're going, okay, you're kind of checking out to see if this is working. It's like, okay, let's finesse this or
Yeah, a collaborative spirit, risk appetite.
mm-hmm.
Like, our entire lives are so risky that, the risk that someone who's like quitting their job at Google to start a tech company is feeling like, sure, it feels like a big deal for them, but
Right.
artists live there.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and then you've been meeting with these venture capitalists to bring some money into the, or just kind of talk about the collective, and you're meeting with these venture capitalists, which is terrific.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just venture capital. It's just at this point in time, the people that we're talking to is we're starting a big fundraising push this summer, but the people that we're talking to often are people who just like interesting, new, innovative ideas that they think can like produce a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it's been an interesting sort of like shift in the last like 10 years with the new tech billionaires, where like a lot of them kind of have this, not that I've met a lot of billionaires, but in general, that space, what that's created is a much bigger risk appetite.
Uh-huh.
And I believe like in a lot of ways, like a very genuine desire to make things better.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't know if it always like pans out, but a lot of them I think do have a desire at least to fix the problem of hunger or like
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. And often it's about like connecting those people with the people who can actually do it.
Right.
uh,
Right.
so we have been finding some traction, at least in terms of like interest, with people who think that, oh, that could be interesting.
Uh-huh.
Then we've also been meeting a lot of people who are like traditionally in the studio model, so to speak.
Right.
And
Right.
even it's been kind of interesting with them too. Like even meeting people at like NBC or CBS or something, their entire lives were rattled when Netflix came on.
Right.
And then Netflix was entirely rattled with whatever's happening right now.
Right.
So everyone kind of sees that we're in a very interesting, very vibrating electric period in
Yeah.
time where nobody really knows what the
Yeah.
right answer is, because anything could be it.
Yes.
Uh,
I
uh,
think also just even with the pandemic, I mean, I think
yeah,
that through the world into we don't know, we have to
yeah,
kind of be flexible and nimble and live in that place where we're all in this together and we don't quite know what's going on. So how can we just keep doing, the best we can every single day to keep things operating. And yeah, I think that was actually one of the gifts of the pandemic that really kind of well, there were lots of gifts, but just even kind of looking at how human beings are, we can be so adaptable and flexible. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just even with balancing this, because that's a lot of work, just all of this is a whole like company unto itself. Just and so you also mentioned like you're a writer too.
Mhm.
So now have you written a television show or if like
Yeah, I mean, with the writing, that was like an interesting thing that happened during the pandemic. I had been a career performer, as you heard, I have this undergraduate degree in economics, but my first job right out of that was a national
Beauty and the
tour of
Beast?
Beauty and the
Yeah,
Beast.
Beauty and the Beast. And
So,
you got to play the Beast. Awesome. You'd be perfect in that role, right? Perfect in that role.
so
Great show.
so for me, being a writer was never something that I thought I want to do, but with this one specific story, it was like, okay, this feels right. And then I was interested in collaborating with the people that I wanted to collaborate with.
Right.
I had the opportunity to write something with my friends, which was interesting. So yeah, that's something I've done, and it's one of the projects that we're developing with MOC. I'm shooting a proof of concept for it end of June. Right now we're in pre-production, which is kind of exciting.
Great.
Yeah, it's called Alien of Extraordinary Ability. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. I don't know if I want to like be a writer because I think it's because the kind of art that I enjoy, at least like doing, I enjoy a rehearsal more than I do anything else, and I don't
uh-huh.
think writers rehearse a lot.
Ah,
uh, so
so
that's
just
that.
that you find yourself more like in the performing end of it, or you enjoy
Yeah,
work
yeah, I enjoy the performing end of it, but even more than the performing end of it, I kind of enjoy just like rehearsing. I enjoy rehearsing, I enjoy preparing for something, I enjoy learning and researching something before doing it. uh, and then, I'm sure there's a little like narcissist within me that's like, look at me. But that's a different thing.
So then when it's up and running, just you kind of feel like, oh, it's up and running, and you kind of miss the discovery of the rehearsing and putting it together.
Yeah, I mean, I have been auditioning during this time. The only like difference being like I haven't taken any like auditions for regional stuff because I kind of have made a commitment to trying to build a life in New York City right now because I'm new
Right.
here.
Right.
So I mean, like Broadway auditions and stuff. I don't know if I can like talk about it right now because we're trying to figure out details of the contract. But I am, hopefully, if everything works out, doing this show this fall. So at that point in time, I might be taking a tiny baby sabbatical for like a couple months, only because I kind of feel it's time. Over the last 2 years,
Yeah, it's
I was
definitely.
very deliberate about what gigs I was taking on.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So I only like took a couple of on camera stuff that didn't expect too much time out of me because like
Uh-huh.
theater
Right.
often is a much bigger commitment.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so
That's
that's what I'm
good. Then
doing
we'll look for your show in
artistically.
the fall about like, what you're doing. So I know that you can't talk about that now, but we'll look for that
Yeah,
in the fall. So now how long have you been in New York?
I moved 2020 during the pandemic
I'm just right there in the 20.
because
That's
I graduated the summer of 2020. It was an unfortunate time to come out of
yes,
conservatory
yes.
into the real world. I'm also an international artist, so I had about 8 months left where I had to figure out a visa. Usually for like international artists, if anybody's watching, what they have to do is like use that time to get as many gigs as possible to make a case for their O1 visa. So that
Uh-huh.
was like kind of trying, but luckily I had a career in India before I came here, so I was able to get a visa. But yeah, that fall I moved to New York. So it's
Uh-huh.
been a year and a half
Oh, so
almost.
this has been like, this is a really total different time. Just like, coming to New York when everything just totally shut down, and
Yeah.
here you are just like going, okay, here we go.
I'm ready to act.
I'm ready to act, I'm ready for the projects and everything.
I literally moved December 2020.
That's right.
It
That's
was
right.
a ghost town, and it was honestly I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
There's
No,
something
it's
meditative about being able to walk on the street with
no
nobody.
one.
Because I came to the city a lot, so I
Yeah.
knew what it was like. But
Yeah.
it was a interesting time too. But what that resulted in, I feel, is like I'm a lot more uh, sort of protective of New York now. Now that a lot of people are back, because I got to experience like empty New York. There's a
Yeah.
part of me that like unrealistically thinks that like I'm entitled to that on some level. I was like, what are you doing here? Ruining the sanctity of my streets because I've been here for a year and a half and now think that I own the place. But yeah.
That's funny. Um, that's funny. Also, I just wanted to throw out, I mean, we have lots to talk about, but if people who are watching do have questions, there's a chat and you can put your question in the chat and I will, ask Edwin the question here. So, yeah, question from Facebook. Did you get a lot of support growing up as an artist, voice lessons, and how early, were you when you started training?
Um, I started singing when I was about 5. My mother maintains that the first professional performance that I did was singing Mary Had a Little Lamb at a school thing. Uh, I had a lot of support, I'd say, because I grew up singing in the church, which was kind of
Uh-huh.
big, and I didn't do a lot of training because I grew up in Delhi, and there is a lot of like art within there that is endemic to that place, but it's not as like formalized as it is in America. The entire process, operatically speaking, the first opera lesson that I had was when I was 19.
Oh,
There
wow.
was this like French organization. I mean, this like organization in India that did opera, and they kind of like found me because I was singing with bands and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, And when I was really, really young, I sang with this like professional sort of group. So that was kind of like training slash performance. So I didn't have a lot of training per se till I got to college, I think. So when
Mhm.
I got to college, I started training uh, as an opera singer. I always performed, but just because I was just enjoyed doing it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
When in college, I started doing a lot of Shakespeare. I started doing lot more acting, and yeah. Then I mean, then coming here for grad school was the first time that I really had sort of dedicated conservatory style training.
Uh-huh.
But everything else, that all the other training that I've had has been incidental within the gigs that I've done.
Mhm.
So like for example, like if I was doing a musical, there would be some kind of like vocal coach who'd like work through details of the piece, or like I'd have like aerial training for like some choreography stuff. So I train within that. But yeah, after coming to New York, though, I've done a lot of classes, including the ones at Barrow Group. Highly recommend. Big plug for Lee and Seth. But yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So in terms of support, I'd say I always had mentors, which is kind of important, and I actively seek them out. I always had people that I trusted, people whose artistic opinions that I trusted,
Mhm.
and I use their time liberally.
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
I'd say my sort of support that I got.
Uh-huh. So from your mentors and also
Mhm.
from your parents. So your parents were big support also to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, nobody batted an eyelid when I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. Actually, to the contrary, my mother was the one who was like, you should probably do that.
Oh, that's good. That's like so
Yeah.
good. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And so, yeah, studying with the Bear Group, we were so fortunate that you were able to come to the Bear Group. So, what were some of the tools that you came away with, after studying with the Bear Group?
I think what I found most interesting about the Barrow Group sort of method was how uh, it lacked self-seriousness, which I really like enjoyed. Because I feel like a lot of actors get really precious about themselves and their craft.
Hmm.
And I think the Barrow Group sort of like the work fundamentally like helped me get over myself, so
Uh-huh.
to speak. I was kind of being like, okay, nobody cares that you feel sad.
Right.
Like that's not that. I mean, sure, like you feel what you feel, you want to move on, but like it's not useful in a scene. It's not
Mhm.
useful in a scene for what the audience is there for.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I think that was a big sort of like fundamental shift. And
Mhm.
then like little details. I think the engendering real behavior and the very useful tips in those terms, like
Mhm.
everything from like oh like props or like look at your surrounding stuff, uh, feels was actually very usable sort of tips because those that kind of stuff is dependable. I like personally for me, I feel like I can't depend on like an emotion to trigger my reaction in a scene.
Right. Right.
But I
Right.
can depend on my breath.
Uh-huh.
But I can depend on a pause,
Uh-huh.
and that was fundamentally useful.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Good. That's like so good. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had in your career? Biggest
The
challenge.
biggest challenges, uh, I mean, rejection feels like, of course, like that's a natural sort of thing to say. But I think rejection specifically because Beauty and the Beast was the first audition that I'd ever done. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that left me with like unrealistic expectations for the career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to say that I've had hundreds of rejections since then.
So that
But
was your first audition. That was
that's
your
my
first.
first audition. That's
Oh
my
my
first
God!
professional audition.
Wow. So your first audition, you just go out to audition for Beauty and the Beast, and you get the Beast and Beauty.
Yeah, it was like they auditioned like 7,000 people in 5 cities, and like it was like a whole thing in India. And so that left me with unrealistic expectations. I was also 21 years old. I didn't know anything.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know anything about anything. So the biggest thing I'd say, like learning to get good at rejection and having like and not taking that personally
Yes.
was sort of a big thing. And on an ongoing basis, I think uh, I don't know if it's like a stumbling block as it is like possibly like an opportunity or like something to like note of use is being able to keep hope alive,
Mhm.
even when you feel like there's no prospects.
Mhm.
For me personally, I always believe that as long as I feel like I have some prospects, it doesn't even need to be a gig. I don't like, it's fine. I understand the realities of the field. I don't need to be like gigging actively. As long as I feel like I have prospects, I feel like, okay, there's a chance.
Mhm.
But you have to figure out ways to build that feeling for yourself, and it could be a support system around you. It could be your own thing with faith, spirituality. It could be your own thing with internal meditative work, but like something that helps you have some kind of tether to
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah. Yeah, like that was gonna, talk about, so like what do you, but I think you answered that question. Like, so what do you do for yourself when you're feeling anxious or when kind of self-doubt comes in? But you were kind of, yeah, what do you tools to help yourself when you're anxious?
Generally, for me, the most useful thing has been to talk to people who believe in me more than I believe in myself at that moment.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which and I think different things work for different people. Like clearly, like I enjoy validation and like that drives a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like literally just talking to a friend who always has thought that this was the right move for me to do this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to see that their belief in that has not changed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
at that point of time, for me, it's like, okay, they probably know better than me. Is I think has been the most useful thing for me, because I'm not great at doing this myself,
Uh-huh.
but some
Uh-huh.
people might be, and
Yeah,
maybe it's something
some
that I
people
should
say,
get
as you
better at.
said, like, meditation or kind of, sharpening your spiritual discipline,
Yeah,
or, whatever that is. But you're saying that the more that you're kind of talking to people who believe in you more than you do,
yeah.
that's
Community for me, I
yeah,
think for me
community.
personally, community is way more important than like any work that I can do personally. I mean, not that I'm not saying you shouldn't do work personally, but that usually immediately sort of like gives me perspective and tethers
Yeah.
me.
No, I totally agree with that. Like, we're strength in numbers, and the more that we
Yeah,
keep nurturing that community,
yeah,
like, we just keep lifting each other up and elevating each other. So, and as you're right, like some people might not see that, thing in themselves. Like when I was producing a lot of the shows at the Barrow Group, it was easier for me to kind of produce other people's work than kind of my own stuff. But it's like, oh, I can do that. I'm gonna, get that stuff up and get this, produce that, get that up, because yeah, sometimes it's not, that's a little easier.
yeah, 100%. Like I have so much faith in my friends.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm convinced that this will like I'm like sure, like it might be in like different ways, it might be like a long time, but I'm like I know for a fact that if they stick around with this, it will happen. It's kind of inevitable.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. But it's often not it's hard to always feel that way about yourself.
Right, right. So being from India, like how did you find that the auditioning is different in India than it is in America?
Oh, completely different.
How
India's
so?
harder. I think it's like way better here. Because in India, I think a lot of it really depends on context. It's kind of really insane. It's I mean it's natural that people keep working with the people that they already know and that kind of exists, but it's you you have to do a lot of the work of connecting with the right people and making them know your work and see, and that still exists in America too,
Uh-huh,
but not as much as I think it exists in India, where
uh-huh,
where you have to like nurture those relationships a lot more to
uh-huh.
possibly even be like considered for like certain kinds of parts,
I see.
and like perception is a lot bigger,
Uh,
whereas like I guess like the giant machinery and apparatus of like American art making sort of, with your casting directors and managers and agents and all that stuff, like does a lot of that, which I don't know if it's like always great, because there's like very defined sort of gates that are hard to like pass through.
mhm, mhm,
But yeah, but I feel like auditions kind of are the same
mhm,
everywhere as a
mhm,
culture.
mhm,
Then
mhm,
there's like individual rooms that of course like feel better or worse. Like for
mhm.
me personally, I think the best audition rooms have been the ones where I don't feel like the people behind the desk are like on a time crunch and they need to
Right.
like see me as quickly as they can and then move on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
um, where they genuinely like feel like they have considered me and
Yeah.
are seriously want to consider my artistry.
Right. Right.
That I'm sure like everyone feels are the best auditions.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. That's um yeah, totally, totally, absolutely on that. Now, so being like an opera singer, like what are some roles that you know are eager to play, or who are some of your favorite composers?
For opera is an interesting thing in my life because, as I mentioned, I truly like the first opera that I ever saw was the first opera that I was in.
Hmm.
There's no culture of opera in India, so it's like an interesting thing for me to have like stumbled onto. But now that I've like done this for some time, I think one part that I definitely want to do is like Tchaikovsky, Eugene Onegin.
Hmm.
It's based off the Pushkin novel. It's like a great like romantic era novel from with the same name. I just think it's so interesting because, and I think it's kind of perfect for the operatic medium because everything is just so heightened. Every
Hmm.
single experience is just so heightened. All the stakes are just so high, but it's like deeply human.
Hmm.
There's nothing metaphysical, there's nothing supernatural. It's truly sort of human ego, love, want, compromise. And yeah, I like that character a lot. uh yeah, Tchaikovsky, I think it's pretty
Yeah.
big.
Yeah. That
Then I
is.
think Verdi is kind of big.
Hmm.
Then there's also a lot of like I think interesting new opera. I have a lot of composer friends who I think are writing interesting work that sort of like straddle the line between like asking when does musical theater become opera? Like
Right.
Hamilton is an opera
Right. Right.
because it is sung through. Les
Right.
Mis is an
Right.
opera.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that kind of work, I
Uh
imagine.
huh.
So
Well.
so if opera you're just like separating a certain kind of vocal production, like a certain type of vocal production, that's a different conversation at Tchaikovsky.
Right.
Is I'd
Yeah.
say pretty up there.
Yeah.
Also the Verdi Shakespeare pieces, like yeah, like Iago and Othello, it's kind of big. Macbeth is a good baritone part, things
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm. That's great. That's a lot on your list. That's a lot on your list. So so terrific. So I know you're a young artist, you know, being in the city. So
Mhm.
but what is there any advice that you can give to young artists who are coming to New York to follow their dreams and to have that New York experience? Is there anything that you can you know, tell them?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing, it is a hard thing because like dreams are so big. I think being realistic about your finances, I think it's so important
Uh-huh. Uh,
because if you're straddled with debt that makes life uncomfortable for you,
right.
it will be impossible for you to be an artist.
Right. Right.
If you are only worried about how you're paying back your loans,
Uh-huh.
uh, 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 I feel it just would be so much harder to be an artist.
Hmm.
But like on the other hand, like I think being more creative about how you can like still gain all the skills that you want to get, still get all the connections that you possibly want to get,
Hmm.
still get all the things that like actors like absolutely require to have like have some kind of career.
Hmm.
And if it's about like moving to New York, I would say wherever you are already, try to do as much work as you can.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I am so thankful that I didn't move to New York straight from India when I was 18. That I
Hmm.
like stuck around there and like did my best to like do as much work as I can
Hmm.
before I like came to New York for my big dream.
Hmm. Right.
Because like one, it gave me a lot of the tools to effectively navigate a lot of the situations that I definitely go through on a daily basis in New York.
Hmm. Hmm.
And like also made a case for me not having to like spend more money in ways that like makes my life hard, like really like being more conscientious in how you plan that aspect of things, and like plan before you just like jump in,
Uh-huh.
because
Uh-huh.
otherwise you'll burn out. So I think I think it's the same like rule as is the case with like a good shoot. Like the more solid your pre-production is, the smoother your shoot's gonna be.
Right, right.
And like the cheaper your shoot's gonna be, and like the higher quality your shoot's gonna be. It's slightly more work and like probably feels less glamorous, but I'd say that is the big one.
Yeah.
Work and like try to avoid debt for as long as you can, and like really think through your finances.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's well, he's a planner, and so kind of has that, you know, degree in economics, and also
I am not a planner, which is exactly why like it's all I'm trying to guide others to a treasure that often eludes me. I'm truly not. I'm full on. Oh, I just want to do things that feel right to me at this point in time because my heart craves it. All I want is like human connection. I have a song in my heart, and I want to share it with the world. But yeah, it's
well, that is wonderful. That is so wonderful. Well, we're at our time right now, but I just wanted to thank you so much for this incredible conversation today. And I'm just so thrilled and excited. Number one, that you're in New York City. So thrilled and excited about, you know, the Midnight Oil Collective and all the things that you're, you know, wanting to do with that. And I want to thank so much. Give thanks to everybody who has joined us on Facebook Live today, and thank you so much. All right.
Thank you so much. I'm such a big fan of all the work that you guys are doing. I'm so interested in supporting it any way that I can. And yeah, I'm excited to see you guys again in class someday. And yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. You take care. All right. Okay.